Welcome back to Light the Fuse. We're still lighting fuses. We're still getting it done. Charles, how you feeling?
I feel pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. You?
Pretty good? What's keeping you from feeling really good?
You know what? No, I'm great. You're right. I'm great.
You're great. You got a great family. Another one on the way. You got a lot of things going on in your life. Very exciting.
Yeah, I've got a great dog.
Yes, I would say maybe the dog is the best part of your family.
Wow. Shots fired.
Yeah, I mean, look out, Charles. I got a new number one, and it's Rusty. Yeah, so I think that's great. I'm happy we got you up to that level just now talking about it. But we're back with another really fun episode. I'm trying to think of how we first got connected with Matthew.
I don't know. Did he reach out to us?
I think he emailed us, yeah.
Yeah, it's because he reached out to us about this connection with the Untouchables, which you've brought up on the show before, that the train sequence that is the finale of Mission Impossible, a version of it was originally intended for the Untouchables, a previous Brian De Palma movie, which, if you have not seen the Untouchables, stop what you're doing right now. Go watch it right now. It's so good. Do it for Sean Connery, who won his Oscar for that movie. Do it for everyone who's in that movie. I mean, Robert De Niro, Kevin Costner's great. I mean, it's an amazing movie.
Ennio Morricone is one of his best scores, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you haven't seen the Untouchables,
go do it.
You should go do it, and you'll see if you watch the train station sequence, which will blow your mind if you've never seen it before, and will blow your mind if you're watching it again for the first time in a while, because that's what it did for me when I rewatched it recently. That was originally intended to be a train, on a train, that sequence, and then later it sort of got morphed and changed into what was Mission Impossible. It's pretty different from the script pages that he sent us.
Well, I couldn't really read those script pages because they were such nonsense.
We get into it. And actually, by the way, I have a theory about that now. When I was getting the script pages ready, because they're going to be on our website, if you go to lightthefusepodcast.com and go to the episode guide and you look up this episode, the Matthew Pearl Part 1, you will find the script pages on there. And I've got a theory. I'm gonna bring it up after. I'm going to tease it now.
Okay.
After we finish the interview, I will tell you what my theory is about the deal with those pages. I have a theory as to why those pages are as sloppy as they are.
Okay, great. We'll be back, and I can't wait to hear this theory. But before we go, obviously I've got to do a little something, Charles, if you'll allow me.
Of course.
I just want to let everyone know that this episode is brought to you by My Favorite Album, where filmmaker and music journalist Jeremy Dillon talks to guests like Fred Armisen, Bob Odenkirk, and Casey Musgraves about the music and sometimes the film that they love and how it's influenced them. And you should definitely check that out. We were recently guests, and we love Jeremy. He's wonderful. This episode is also brought to you by John B. And it's also brought to you by Real Estate Interest LLC, commercial real estate advice for growing companies. If companies want to consult with them, they will help them strategize and also save. So even if you're not buying right away, talk to them and they'll set you up. So that's it, Charles. That's my lot in life. Just reading those ads, so, you know.
I know you always talk about how much you love it. I'm thrilled to let you have the chance to do it.
Whew, so good. All right, well, we'll be back after this, and Charles will give us his theory on why those pages are unreadable. We are so thrilled to be joined today by Matthew Pearl, best-selling novelist, historical genius, I would say, just researching all these amazing things, author of the Dante Club, right?
That's right.
You wrote a book about Poe, too, right?
Oh, I've written a bunch of books. Yes, one about Poe called The Poe Shadow.
Yes, okay. Did that come out around the same time as Louis Bayard's Poe book? Because
the same day.
Okay. Charles just told you we were from Connecticut. I used to write for an independent weekly there, and I reviewed, I think, there was a third one, too, that came out around the same time, and I think I reviewed all of those together. This is back in the ancient days of where people actually picked up a newspaper. But, yeah, so it's so exciting to have you here.
Oh, my gosh. I'm a late discoverer of Light the Fuse, and I was binging. I've now caught up, but I was binging every episode. Oh yeah, I've caught up, and just while I was washing dishes and cooking, and every member of my family, that's my wife and 3 kids, would come up to me and, what is that? What are you what are you listening to, Daddy? So I've been obsessed with the podcast, and I'm just honored to be on the only Mission Impossible podcast that would have me on.
You need to start indoctrinating your kids.
Yeah.
Get them on the. Do they watch Mission with you at all?
That's a really great question, I think, because you guys, one of your interviews, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was with Brad Bird, who brought up that the Mission movies are family movies. But it might have been, was that McHugh?
That
sounds
that
more
might have
like
been
a Brad Bird.
Sounds like a Brad Bird.
We've talked to a lot of people.
Yeah, you talked to a lot of people, and I just listened to all of it. But it's true. The reason I discovered your podcast is that I've gotten back, not that I ever fell out of Mission Impossible, but I started watching all of them again because my oldest son, who's 10, I started watching it with him, and he just fell in love with them. And it really, it's one, there's a certain age you get to. I mean, I'm a huge animation fan, so I'm happy watching, as I know you guys are too, I'm happy watching the Disney and the Pixar, but then you get to a really cool age where you can start watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you're not there yet, Charles, but it's kind of this big moment.
Yeah, Charles. I've actually not allowed Charles to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark yet, so that's going to be big when he gets to see that. Yeah,
I'm not old enough.
And the Bond movies are a little trickier, but it's true. The Mission movies really, it's something actually I've shared with several family members. It's something I watch with my dad in the past, and he would still watch with us. I think he did watch one of the ones I was showing Cooper, my son. It's something that I think, well, you guys seem like your friendship also kind of grows with Mission Impossible. It's an interesting way that Mission Impossible can bring people together, I feel like.
Yeah, and Charles is still working on having a closer relationship with his father via the Mission Impossible movies, so we're still working on that.
It hasn't been going that well, but we're working on it.
Can you do so? I'm now a member. Can we plug your Patreon?
Yes. Oh, please.
Yeah. So I after becoming obsessed with your podcast, joined your Patreon. Now I do have a little quibble, which is I'm a mission commander. Which
oh wow,
yeah, right?
Is that Swanback level?
It's Swanback.
Yeah, that's Swanback level. So you get all the bonus content. That's
but
great.
Yes, but isn't that a little passive aggressive because Swanback isn't really our favorite middle manager, is he?
But I don't know. We love Swanback. Just the name Swanback. I mean,
the name is great.
He also interrupts Tom Cruise while he's on vacation, which few mission commanders would be able to do.
Right.
And he's the only one who says Mission Impossible, right?
Yes, that's true.
How do you guys feel about when he says that? I don't remember if you talked about it in your...
I think that movie is tonally all over the place, I think. But I think it works in that movie. I think Anthony Hopkins pulls it off.
There's some ridiculous lines in that movie, and I love all of them. The one about, snowball chance in hell. That whole line that Cruise delivers. There's some good, like, pretty ridiculous lines in MI2.
We should have pressed Ron Moore on that when we had him on. Did you write Snowball Chance in Hell?
All right, or was that Robert Towne? Yeah, we should have asked him.
Yeah.
But I love the extra content. Although it's funny, right as we were leading up to this interview, I got one of your notifications. I've never had a private RSS, is that what it's called, that populates your podcast with special content, which I feel makes me feel really important. And I got your episode reviewing the mask that Tom Cruise currently wears in the pandemic, and I'm just thinking, oh man, right when I'm going to do an interview with these guys, they've just lost their minds. It's gone too far. There's no way back.
I know, and another Patreon member suggested that, which is the really sick part, is that we're not alone. That this is a growing community.
I would like that all of this is leading up to say that I actually am very interested in the subplot of Charles's relationship with his father via Mission Impossible or not via Mission Impossible. So has he seen any or all of the movies?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about it on the show. I mean, I saw the first movie with him, and he encouraged me to watch the old show before the first movie came out, and that's what drove me to go to the Museum of Television and Radio in New York when I was, 12, 13 years old, and I would go into the city and watch the old episodes of the TV show. And so he sort of put me on the path of becoming obsessed with Mission Impossible.
Nice.
And Drew had his own path of becoming obsessed with Mission Impossible, and then we crossed paths, and then together we feed each other's obsessions with Mission Impossible.
It's just a nonstop text chain back and forth. I know nothing about Charles's personal life or family. I just know the latest set photos from Mission Impossible 7.
Did I miss this in one of the episodes? Was there a moment when the two of you kind of realized you both loved Mission Impossible?
Wait, who's interviewing who here? What's happening right now?
Yeah, what? Yeah, Matthew Pearl is interviewing
Is this
us.
your podcast?
I want to audition for it to be the third wheel.
We saw Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol together. We'd always loved the movies, but we saw the fourth one together at Lincoln Center.
Oh, I know that story. No,
at that IMAX.
Yeah, I remember that story.
At that AMC IMAX in Lincoln Square. Yeah.
We met Brad Bird later that night because I had been invited to this thing literally at Lincoln Center where he went through his whole filmography. And then, I mean, that movie was such a huge moment for us, I think. And then we just started texting about it all the time. And then I think right before Fallout came out, we said, we got to just do it. And we had no idea it was going to lead to 125 and counting episodes. But it was a mutual boredom and / obsession that led to it.
Yeah. And I think that Ghost Protocol screening in IMAX was one of the greatest movie-going experiences I've ever had in my life. And Drew and I, like, the moment Tom Cruise said "Light the Fuse," like, we were like hooting and hollering and screaming along, and it was just the most amazing, unforgettable experience. So yeah, that ever since then we've just been texting and talking about Mission Impossible, and I feel like we would always joke that we would overanalyze it and talk about it way more than anyone else ever did. And then we're like, there's got to be somebody out there else who thinks about it as much as we do. Let's just start a podcast, and then it went from there.
Well, we're the beneficiaries. We're very lucky.
Yes, yeah. At the detriment of all of our interpersonal relationships and free time. It's all for you.
But but Matthew, you brought up to us. You reached out to us because you were working on something relating to Eliot Ness. Is that what it was? You were researching the Untouchables screenwriting project. Why don't you tell us about why you reached out to us?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I really reached out to have an excuse to talk to you guys. I worked on a piece for Vanity Fair about how the Untouchables came to be. So it was actually a book. It was a memoir co-written by Eliot Ness himself, and a very colorful, which is kind of a euphemism in this case, sports reporter named Oscar Fraley. And that's what became a TV show / movie, because actually the pilot episode was in theaters at the time, and then in '87 became the feature film. So Untouchables was kind of a touchstone movie for me. So it was something I was always interested in, but in kind of unraveling some of the behind the scenes material, I had noticed that that famous third act climax in the train station, right? That is there's, I guess, no spoiler for the Untouchables, right? But it's where Ness and the other member of the Untouchable with him, Untouchables, which is George Stone, are trying to get the bookkeeper for Al Capone, who has the materials that could put him away for tax evasion, which actually was what Capone was imprisoned for. So there's this wonderful scene where there's a baby carriage that's coming down the steps, and there's all kinds of homage to earlier cinema that De Palma works into it. But what I found was that that originally the screenplay by David Mamet was meant to have this big, exciting chase scene involving a moving train, and they ran out of money, and so they had to improvise essentially that climax. And by the way, Mamet was really angry at this. Apparently, he was angry, I think, at multiple things in the Untouchables, and won't participate. I think never really participated. Maybe he's given an interview here or there. He wouldn't talk to me. I mean, that,
wow,
you could say that about a lot of people, won't talk to me, but he wouldn't talk to me for this article. I did talk to one of the producers. But in any case, so I was always thinking that the train sequence in Mission Impossible, which of course is also Brian De Palma, may have been in some way De Palma's kind of redo, right, of that scene that they originally had wanted to do in the Untouchables.
Well, and you had heard that yourself, Drew. I remember you said that on the show before.
Yeah.
That originally the train sequence for Untouchables sort of got repurposed for Mission Impossible.
Well, and Mamet wouldn't even come back to rewrite the scene, right? He was like, fuck this, I'm not going to be a part of it at all.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's obviously many screenwriters and playwrights and all writers who you could say this about, but I guess he isn't the easiest person to work with, apparently.
Yeah.
I mean, interestingly, the scene is awesome, as it came out, of course. It's one of the kind of reasons that the Untouchables sort of stands out in De Palma's kind of range of work. For me, the train sequence in the first Mission Impossible falls a little bit flat. So it's interesting to me that sometimes when you're given limitations as a creator, writer or director or whatever it is, sometimes you come up with something better, and you kind of get the sense in that climactic scene of Mission Impossible there really weren't limitations, right? They could go all out, and it's definitely fun, don't get me wrong. I just feel like compared to some of the other, and you guys have talked about this multiple times, that the third act of Mission Impossible movies until Fallout I'm very much a student of your theories, are struggling, right? They're struggling to find, like, how do you do this? How do you have a third act?
Right.
How do you have a climax, rather, in the third act that can match those other set pieces?
Right.
And I definitely felt that way about the original Mission Impossible. So I was curious and inspired by the chance to kind of exchange ideas with you guys. I did dig up those original pages, or at least pages before it was changed. I'm not sure whether there might be pages that even predate the ones that I dug up from an archive.
It seems like Mamet had very little regard for correct spelling and or kind of legibility, because that scene is really hard to read, I found, especially in sort of the modern vernacular of screenplays. Charles, did you find that too?
Yeah, it's a very strangely structured at times. Like not following traditional screenplay structure. And I feel like I've looked at a Mamet screenplay in the past, not recently, but I feel like I don't remember it being written in this style. So I don't know if it seemed like it was done on a typewriter and it was done quickly. And there were a lot of typos and a lot of, I don't know, just kind of like, fuck it, I'm just going to go to the next paragraph here and do whatever the fuck I want. This is my new version of how to write a screenplay.
Yeah. Is it Andy Garcia in that scene, or is it the other character that ends up getting killed?
Yeah, this is Andy Garcia, but he was originally a Polish. So the reason in these pages, which I dug up, it's Vlachek. I'm not sure if that's how they
right.
would have said it instead of Stone. And of course, Stone was a pseudonym for his Italian name, which I can't remember what it was in the movie that he's kind of hiding.
Right.
So yes, that would have been the same. Well, I guess it wouldn't have been played by Andy Garcia, although Andy Garcia probably also is an Italian. Well, who knows? But
yeah. Hashtag let Andy Garcia be Hispanic.
It's I was disappointed once I found the pages. I didn't think it was that exciting of a train chase that Mamet had charted out there.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very much like he was trying to pay homage to Hitchcock while also being a little bit more dangerous. Like, the priest has a Tommy gun under his, frock or whatever, which was cool, but yeah, it doesn't have a lot of punch. I mean, I think that what they improvised apparently was a lot more effective, and I don't know. I don't know if the movie would have been responded to as well if this was in there instead of the Odessa steps sequence.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree, and I would argue for our purposes beyond the scene and whether or not. I mean, look, trains end up having kind of this recurring importance in the Mission Impossible franchise, right? In a really cool way, and continue to, right, from the set photos you guys have pointed out for Mission Impossible 7. And I think you think of the kind of secret train compartment in Ghost Protocol, which is like all that's left of the IMF, right? So if there is kind of any transference from the Untouchables to that first Mission Impossible, I mean, I was an English major, which is, why this is, well, probably at least one of you are too, or we wouldn't be here analyzing, close reading these things. But, it's kind of interesting to follow that thread of the trains. But I'd also argue that the Untouchables itself, as a movie, holds kind of a really important position in relation to Mission Impossible. The adaptation, the 1987 adaptation of Untouchables, was really the first TV. It actually beat by something like 2 weeks Dragnet, which, well, there's not a podcast. There's not a podcast on the Tom Hanks. Wait, who is his partner?
Dan Aykroyd.
Oh yeah, Dan Aykroyd. For some reason, there's not a podcast series on that movie. But the Untouchables was really the first big screen adaptation of a TV show. I mean, look, if you think about it from kind of a bird's eye view, by the 1980s. That's really kind of the earliest you could possibly be kind of taking one of these IP, the intellectual properties that is developed from TV, from what, I mean, you're not going to really do something from the 50s, so 60s and 70s, right? That's really kind of the earliest you can reboot one of those shows, right? So The Untouchables was a big test case for that. And it's interesting because the early press in the mid-'80s to the release of The Untouchables will start mentioning Mission Impossible. And you guys have very thoroughly covered the kind of development of Mission Impossible behind the scenes. But it will start mentioning it as also being developed as a movie by Paramount, which is the studio that's also putting out The Untouchables. So I don't think it's not coincidental, I think, that the success of The Untouchables is kind of tied together with Mission Impossible explicitly in the press, and that De Palma, who you might trust, who you would look for as you're kind of evolving what Mission Impossible might become, that's what it'll be. I even see some hints there. You guys remember, of course you remember, the end of Rogue Nation when they're back at the kind of congressional hearing or whatever it is, and one of the senators says, "I don't approve of your methods." And I'm hearing in that, there's another great scene in The Untouchables where I don't approve of your methods, Mr. Ness, on the Canadian border. And he says, well, you're not from Chicago. So I get little hints of The Untouchables throughout. And I do think there's a DNA that kind of slips over.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think that it was being developed at the same time. And De Palma had no clue that, 10 years later he would be brought back to do it. But it also they both served very crucial sort of junctures in De Palma's career in terms of sort of getting back on track, getting back into the mainstream, and giving him that boost where he could go do something crazy afterwards and not have to worry about the kind of box office hit that he would take if it didn't perform financially. I mean, they've both been hugely important in his life too. I mean, we hope that we talk to him at some point. He just wrote a great book that you should check out. He wrote a novel that's really a hoot. And so we're going to try to get him on when the paperback comes out. But yeah, I mean, and it also is De Palma developing that kind of like team idea that you see in Mission Impossible.
That's a great point, because those are some of my favorite moments when they're putting together the team of kind of experts / outcasts.
Yes.
Sean Connery, who, by the way, that was also a big comeback for him.
Right.
Which people forget. I mean, he was not in a good career place when he was in The Untouchables, and then he was, I can't remember if he won the Oscar or he was at least nominated. I think he
won, right?
Yeah, I think
that's his one win.
Oh, was that his only win? Maybe. So, yeah, I mean, each of the team members are kind of on the outskirts. They're sort of the equivalent of disavowed, of what will become disavowed in Mission Impossible.
Right.
Yeah, he did win the Oscar, which is great.
You know, it's even possible that the Untouchables TV series also helped set up the, confidence in that kind of serial to create the Mission Impossible TV series. But I don't know enough on that. But the Untouchables series was a huge success at the time as well.
Right.
You know, speaking of the disavowed thing, that just made me think, I had a question for you guys as experts, since I don't know if I'll, how often I'll get to talk to you guys. So in Rogue Nation, why are they so upset when Luther and I can't remember who he's with figure out that Ilsa is disavowed? And they're, oh my gosh, she's trouble. Remember that? But they're disavowed every few hours. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing
Charles
it out
is the
there.
Rogue Nation expert. I wash my hands of Rogue Nation occasionally.
Drew will not attempt to answer this question because he does not feel like he can make sense, head or tails of Rogue Nation.
Yeah.
Although Jeremy Dillon just made sense of it for you. I would hope that helped for you. I think it's the whole run of Rogue Nation, now we look back and we know Ilsa is one of our heroes and we love her and she's great. But when you're watching Rogue Nation for the first time, the big question behind the whole movie is, can we trust this character? Mm-hmm. Is Ilsa trustworthy? Is she good or is she bad? And I think that's just another turn in the story where I think at that point you're thinking, okay, yeah, she's helping the good guys. I think she's good. I think she's working against Solomon Lane. I think that's the case. And then, Luther and Brandt come across the info that she's been, she's like a rogue agent and has left the British agency. I assume that's what they say. I can't remember exactly. It's just another moment for the audience to go, oh, wow, okay, maybe we can't trust Ilsa. Maybe she is bad. Yeah,
I think it's on their computer screen. It just flashes disavowed. It just made me smile because they're always disavowed. But
yeah, I think they're disavowed through that entire movie. But yeah.
One thing that I think you guys, it's so interesting to hear you guys talk about, and I'd love to hear more of, is kind of why Mission works as a franchise. Untouchables, back to Untouchables. Like, Untouchables could have been a franchise.
Yeah.
Right? And they planned a prequel that never happened. But like, even that was unnecessary acrobatics. There's a story engine there. I mean, Ness continues to have, not that you have to follow history, and Untouchables certainly didn't follow it that closely. But, Ness continues to be in law enforcement. I mean, it wouldn't have been that much of a stretch, but it's really interesting. I think, like, why Die Hard, and I listened to you guys talk about Die Hard 3, but why Die Hard sort of globally as a franchise really never worked, why Jack Ryan, there are parts that work, and I really like the new show, but it was kind of constantly searching for itself. It's interesting to think why Mission really was able to stabilize and grow so well.
Yeah, and wasn't De Palma attached to one of those Untouchables prequels at one point? Capone Rising. Something.
Right? Yeah, which couldn't have had the Untouchables in it, obviously, because the Untouchables formed around Capone. That was a strange plan. I mean, the idea was, well, let's keep Capone. Well, it can't be De Niro anyway.
Yeah.
So what is the appeal of that? And Die Hard, I think everything, even though Die Hard 2 is strong in some ways, what it's setting the rules for the franchise is that, all these things have to be recreated every time. It has to be Christmas.
Right.
It has to be John McClane getting accidentally into this situation. Right. The rules, which are...
His wife has to be in danger.
His wife has to be... All of which are unnecessary because he's a police officer. You have no trouble with the story engine. It's not like taking Home Alone. Yeah, like Home Alone, you're going to get in trouble as soon as you do a sequel because... Like, what can you do with this kid? You have to get him home alone again, right? But you didn't have to do that with Die Hard. Yeah, it's just like and now, of course, they try to have writers' rooms. And I think you guys educated me that at one point, Mission Impossible started to have a writer's room to kind of steer the franchise. Pirates of the Caribbean is having trouble kind of figuring out, where they went wrong if they did and where they could go. So it's just, it's almost unprecedented because Bond is sort of its own thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's almost unprecedented how strong the franchise has been.
Well, Charles and I have always been fascinated by the sort of proposed Untouchables follow-up that at one point David Fincher was going to do called Torso.
Oh yeah.
which I'm sure you know about Ness and the torso killings and how it would have been a very depressing probably movie if you wanted to see, Kevin Costner triumph again, but him championing seatbelt laws and then his wife dying in a car accident and all that stuff was going to be in Fincher's movie, which is still a fascinating, like, what if. I don't know why nobody's done anything with that property after Fincher left.
Yeah,
But,
I don't think his wife. I don't think he ever had a wife that died.
Oh, really?
I don't think so. I'm trying to remember. He was married a couple times.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. But there's a bunch of properties. I think there's a graphic novel, which maybe that is what
that was what it was based on. Yeah.
I think there's also kind of straight novels and nonfiction books on torso. But I agree with you, Drew. I think tonally, it would just be you would just be mixing a genre, kind of a Fincher-like genre, Zodiac or Seven with Eliot Ness. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. It would have been fascinating, whatever it would have been.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, I would have loved to have seen 10 more of these movies. But I think part of what makes Untouchables so special is it is this kind of like little perfect gem, and everything came together in just the right way, between the Morricone music and the Armani costumes. And,
I love that.
Everything about it is just so wonderful. And, we wish Paul Hirsch had edited it. That's the only thing. Although Greenberg and Pankow did a great job. But I know Paul joked to us that he suggested Greenberg to De Palma, and then he lost a decade's worth of collaborations with De Palma after he suggested him. So, but yeah, it really is like a perfect little movie.
I'd never really thought too about, you brought up that like it is the start of all the TV adaptations. That was such a craze that was through the 90s leading up to Mission Impossible, when you had Addams Family and Brady Bunch and all these other
The Saint.
Beverly Hillbillies.
Right, which The Saint could have, if it had been managed well, I feel like could have been a franchise. Maybe it's still, I think they're always trying to redo it, right? But
yeah,
right.
I think The Saint was partially put into production because they were waiting for the second Mission Impossible.
Oh, interesting.
Which hadn't come at that point. It was a
Right.
little while between sequels for various reasons, but yeah, The Saint sucks a lot. But it was another, Paramount property.
That was Paramount.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple that predated Untouchables, but were of a different type, like the Star Trek movies, right? Obviously, there was
Right.
a TV flow between, but it wasn't the same kind of thing because it was kind of, I can't remember the exact history, but was it that the first season of Star Trek didn't really perform, and then it became a movie, and then maybe they restarted the TV?
I think it was because it was performing in syndication.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
So
they brought it back.
right. And then there was the Muppets obviously kind of made the jump, but the Untouchables was the first, because you got Lucas and Spielberg, who were really being inspired by what? They're being inspired by the short serials from what, the 50s, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like as you move forward, there's this chance to start using TV properties, which we're now very accustomed to. But it really did kind of break ground, and there were so many that didn't work, as you say, like The Saint, like Dragnet. I actually remember enjoying Dragnet whatever age I was. It was really kind of crazy. But, I think most of them don't work. So it's the rare ones. And it's interesting, in the original articles that I found, I know you guys look through these too, that mention Mission Impossible in the 80s. And I was looking at them connected to the Untouchables. But even then, some of the articles bring up the music, which is to say that because we all know the music, it's an easy kind of entry point for audiences, which is somehow totally true. Somehow that music remained as part of popular culture even once the TV show of Mission Impossible kind of faded away.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy.
And you can't really say that for a lot of the other ones. Another franchise that made it through was Addams Family, which also has a very famous song.
Yeah, we talk about how the Mission Impossible theme was being used in Wayne's World, like a couple of years before and stuff like that. It is really crazy how that theme song has kept the franchise alive in these kind of like more fallow periods for it. And then obviously, the 80s theme, it's great, just great. I don't know if you watched the 80s show.
I've never seen the 80s show.
It's something else. It's recycled scripts from the 60s. made in Australia during a writer's strike.
Oh, really? I didn't.
Yeah.
I think I might have missed that. You did an episode. Did you? You did an episode on the issue.
Yeah, we did an episode about it.
I think we have a couple episodes about it, at least one. Yeah.
Yeah, really testing people's patience on those two. But yeah, but I mean that was in there too. It's a much more 80s version, but yeah, it's crazy how that has been the through line.
I have learned so much from your podcast that I never thought I needed to know.
Wow. Well, we're sorry or thank you. All right, let's hear it, Charles.
All right, you want to hear my theory?
Yeah.
Okay, so looking at those script pages, which again are on our website, lightthefusepodcast.com, in the episode guide under this episode. I don't know what the exact page numbers are. I don't have it in front of me, but they are the page number. Like each page of this sequence that he gave us is like, I don't know what the number is. It's like, let's say it's 102. It's like 102A, and then the next page is 102B, and 102C, and 102D, and I think it's 6 pages. So it's all those, the first 6 letters of the alphabet. And so my theory is that was a scene that was added that was not part of David Mamet's script, and he was asked to write the scene. And so it was inserted, because that's what happens when you add pages to a script. That's what you do. You add letters to it. So it's 102A and 102B, so whatever the actual page numbers are. But those were pages that were inserted into his script. And so my theory is Brian De Palma, or whoever, I would assume it was De Palma, asked him, hey, I want to add this sequence here. I want to give it something exciting here, where they get the bookkeeper. So this is the sequence. I pitch it to Mamet, and then Mamet goes and writes these pages, and he doesn't even want the scene to happen. So he just half-asses it and writes it in this incomprehensible way. And that's it. That's my theory.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, sure. That tracks. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like from what Matthew said, Mamet was not happy with the movie. And so if he wasn't happy with the process, then it stands to reason that maybe he would not be happy about adding these pages. And so he would just half-ass it and be like, blah, whatever.
Interesting. I think that's a great theory.
Thank you.
It's really hard to read, for sure. Yeah, it's crazy. But you guys can look and tell us what you think. Maybe it's pure poetry to some of our listeners, but yeah. But Matthew is he's wonderful, and so happy to have him on. Is this the first part of 2-part or what?
Yeah, this is part 1, and
okay.
he followed up with us after the interview to point out that Desilu, which was Lucille Ball's company, they produced the original Mission Impossible, but he pointed out that they also produced the original Untouchables TV show.
Wow!
So it all goes back to Desilu. It all goes back to Lucille Ball. Pretty cool.
Yeah, really great. And you're going to hear more from Matthew next week. Do we have anything else to tease, Charles?
Well, I wanted to bring up, this is something, because after we talked about David Fincher's Torso adaptation, it's that graphic novel, I looked it up and I found a couple of interesting things about that. That it's long gone. That project's never going to happen. But for one, Matt Damon was going to play Eliot Ness, which I think would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
At least that was the common rumor that was what was happening. That makes sense because Soderbergh has such a close relationship with both Fincher and Damon, so they probably would get connected. And then I found this David Fincher quote from MTV News in 2008, which is really fun. He says, as Fincher was doing recently on the Mank press tour, this is going to piss off some people. I loved comic books as an 8-year-old, but I was pretty much over it by the time I was 11. There's so little dialogue in comic book movies that isn't about narrative, where you have to be next and how to get the talisman and why it has to be in a lead-lined box. Maybe this is my own cynical nature, but I feel like most of the time people speak, it's to position and understanding. I'm less interested in what characters say in a movie than what their faces look like while they're saying it. I'm always more interested in how people lie than how they tell the truth. And then he goes on to say, not to take anything away from Bendis, that's the guy who made the graphic novel, who did an amazing thing, but it's a pretty complete reimagining of it. Certainly from a stylistic standpoint, it will be Bendis's world. But from a story standpoint, it's not just Eliot Ness in the moment. It's not a linear chronology. It's more like Rashomon or Citizen Kane. It's an exploded version of it.
Interesting.
There's a lot to unpack there, obviously, but his comic books, that was in 2008, him talking about comic book movies, and obviously that was the year Iron Man came out and Marvel started, and now in hindsight, looking at that, what's your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I just am very curious about that version of Torso. I remember he screened Zodiac, the director's cut, at Film Society of Lincoln Center, and I went, and during the Q&A, I asked him about Torso, and he said it was going to be a serial killer movie like you'd never seen before or something.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I wish that we could have gotten that Torso. I would take any Torso at this point. I think David Lowery was attached a few years ago, but that has not happened yet either. So I don't even know.
Right. Yeah. Sounds like it'd be a really cool movie, but I don't know. Maybe somebody someday will do it. I'd be down with David Lowery. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Do you know what we talk about next week with Matthew?
We talk about, he's got a lot of theories and things that we break down Mission in ways that we hadn't before. It's amazing. It's the best. There.
Okay.
That's my sales pitch.
I can't wait.
No, I mean, we talk about Mission Impossible and all kinds of stuff. He's so fun to talk to, and he brings up a lot of interesting points, which we'll break down next week. But something else that we don't talk much about in this interview, but a really important TV adaptation that came before Mission is The Fugitive, which was 1963 to 67. And with Matthew, we have a exclusive Patreon interview that we did with him all about. So we obviously know the famous Harrison Ford adaptation of The Fugitive that came out before Mission Impossible, also in a way paving the way for Mission Impossible. He did script coverage. He was working at a production company at the time in the mid-90s. After The Fugitive came out, he did script coverage for a sequel to The Fugitive that was not the Wesley Snipes U.S. Marshals, but it was a sequel that featured Richard Kimball, the character that Harrison Ford plays, and it is hilarious. And so he talks to us all about this failed attempt at a direct sequel to The Fugitive that sounded pretty hilarious. So if you want to hear that bonus goodie, then you need to sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/lightthefuse. Sign up at the Patreon level, and you can get that and so many other bonus episodes we've been doing lately. We always track whatever's going on with Mission Impossible 7. We do episodes a lot about the production and what they're doing. We keep it spoiler-free, other than maybe some light spoilers, but we always give warnings. And what else, Drew?
I just want people to like, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And, just talk about it, tell people about it. Like, we need all the help we can get, and that kind of organic word of mouth actually goes a long way. So it would really be helpful if you did that, right?
Oh, and buy a shirt or something from our TeePublic store. We're always trying to add stuff on there. I know we slowly add items, but there are great shirts there. A couple of them are fan designed, and so it's a really cool thing. That's linked from our website, lightthefusepodcast.com. in the merch section, and then also check out our episode guide and look at the show notes for all our episodes, because that's a really cool visual complement to this podcast. And I want to give a special thank you to Dustin Catalan. Thank you, Dustin, so much for your support. You've made this show possible. And also a special thank you to Abby Smith, our intern, and thank you to our editor and mixer, Luke Burson. And the music by Kevin Blumenfeld, our dear friend Kevin. Thank you so much. And that's about it for us, right?
Yeah, that's it. We'll be back next week with Matthew Pearl, Part 2.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.